Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Finding Common Battlegrounds. This is your somewhat irregular podcast. Tom and I have been busy, where we discuss typically political issues, but not exclusively political issues from two different perspectives, a kind of left-leaning, right-leaning perspective. Got
And in
two.
an orderly lot of Florida news, Florida local news.
And strangely, unfortunately, it's just stuff that I read, so I do
No exception
apologize for that.
tonight.
No exception tonight. There will be more Florida related stuff going on. So we have the two of us. I'm Ryan Cragen. I'm on the left. I'm the progressive. Tom, you want to introduce yourself?
I am the conservative. Yeah, we're
Yeah.
we're very conservative. The H word in my house is hate. You're not supposed to say the H word. That's how conservative we are. They don't
You
even
don't
know what the F word
homeschool
is.
though. You don't homeschool. I mean, that would be
No.
really
Yeah, that
conservative.
would be we're not there. We're not there.
Anyway, before we jump into our
My wife
two,
doesn't wear
oh,
jeans underneath her
her
dress,
prairie dress
her
with
prairie
the
dress. Yeah.
full hairdo.
We're not,
We do have two
right.
topics tonight. We'll see if we hit a couple of others. Quick shout out to our sponsor, Lux Bidets. They've been great sponsors of the show, and of course, everybody should get a bidet. Tom, yeah,
Yes,
yeah,
yes.
no question. If you're not using a bidet, you are not a civilized human being. Sorry, it is the future. It is the way. Like I wonder if you ask ChatGPT, right? Like, what is the most civilized way to use a
Mhm.
toilet? If it would be like, get a bidet, right?
Well, like I went like not even civilized. What's the most clinically best way to use
Yeah,
the
we should totally
toilet,
do that.
right?
Yeah,
And
we should do
yeah.
that. Maybe I'll have it like Dolly generate a picture of the
Oh yeah, yeah.
most clinically like yeah, like scientifically what's the best way to clean yourself after using the toilet, and I'll just have Dolly. We're gonna do that for the next episode for sure.
Oh, that sounds great.
Uh anyway, so our first topic tonight, it is tied to Florida because that's where it came up, but it's not exclusively in Florida. There are a number of other states that have actually been doing something similar. This is just me paying attention to local news, but a news story came through that there are two Florida bills that have been introduced in our House and Senate that would roll back some child labor laws. So the topic is really child labor laws and child labor generally. Just to give a quick, very quick summary of what these would do, both of them target 16 and 17-year-olds. So they're not talking about like 4-year-olds or 5-year-olds. These are 16 and 17-year-olds. And the first one would roll back protections for when and how many hours 16 and 17-year-olds can work. So they're kind of getting rid of caps. So right now, these kids are capped. They can't work more than a certain number of hours. They can't work a certain number of hours on school nights. They can't work too late at night. So there are all of these restrictions that are currently in place, and they're trying to roll those back and basically say, now, 16 and 17-year-olds can work more than 30 hours a week. They can work past 11 p.m. on a school night. So there are a number of kind of regulations that they're trying to roll back. The second one, which is coming from the Senate, would make it so they can work in what are classified as kind of riskier, more dangerous jobs. And the particular one here is actually roofing. So
Hmm.
roofing in the state of Florida is considered a pretty risky job. There are people who die every year falling off
Oh, for
roofs.
sure.
And this one wants to make it so 16 and 17-year-olds, once they get like a safety training, I don't know if you've ever had to do a safety training, but a safety training, then they can choose to work in construction, in particular in roofing. So again, right now they're not allowed to do that. So that's what the two bills are proposing. And like I said, these are not unique to Florida. I just happen to catch it because it's happening in Florida right now. But there are 16 other states that have already done something along these lines. So they're rolling back these laws. So that's the quick background. And when I caught it, I just thought, let's bring it up on the podcast and see what we think and where we fall on this. So I'm going to punt it over to you, Tom. What's your take on this?
Well, I'm gonna guess that this across this movement that's happening across these states is in reaction to some of the labor shortages that we experienced the last couple of years, where people couldn't get anyone to do stuff. And I did read some articles that we're sort of saying, hey, we can't find workers, so we're going to find more children to work, right? And it was sort of a derogatory statement, and this is probably part of that, right? And
Yeah.
it's um so I get it. Now, so here's my take, and I think, and I have to thank the podcast for helping me formulate my I ideologue around this, because to me this is pretty cut and dry. It in As a general rule, I am for free speech and deregulation. Um, and so I very few circumstances where I think free speech should be limited, and I think removing regulation is generally a good thing. However, except for minors. And like that's the one place where I do think that it is needed and is necessary. And so that's where books should be banned, and that's where there should be regulations and protections, and that's where things they should be looked after, right? Because minors are like, if we look at minorities, right? Any minority, it's basically this group that need to be looked after or is weak or vulnerable, right? Minorities is like the de facto definition of that, right? And so this is a group that, like, probably more than I think any other minority group, needs to be looked after and needs to be watched after, right? They do not oftentimes they do not have they can't be their own advocates in many times in many places, either through underdeveloped brains or just because they're weak and young. And so yeah, I'm so yeah, I actually think I thought it was interesting. There was a conservative group that was pushing this, and which is pretty much falls in line with, conservatives are usually trying to deregulate, but yeah, with minors, no, I'm totally fine with them keeping those laws and not repealing them, right? Keeping them in place. And it's hard to say, right? It's like the article did say something about, sometimes it's better to have them out working than them sitting on a phone all day, right? And you're like, yeah, I agree. It's not like, hey, you guys can't do anything. Just sit on this computer down in the basement all day and rot your brains out, right? It's like, what is best for the child?
Right.
And so I haven't looked at the studies enough, or if this is problem. I doubt it's being pushed because of that. I'm sure it's being pushed because of labor shortages. And so I don't see any reason to. And everything they had in there seemed reasonable, right? It's like 30 hours when they're going to school. That's still a lot of hours.
Yeah.
So like that, that might even be too much as it is, right? That's a lot, 30 hours in a week. And I mean, they're working all day Saturday or something like that. But that's a lot of hours. So yeah, I'm totally fine. Like I'm not like I would be fine if it did not get repealed and it just stayed as it was.
Right. So you're not a fan of this.
Just because it's
Strangely,
minorities.
yeah. Right. Uh, I think we're probably in agreement, but let's play with this a little bit, as I'm wont to do, because this is how I approach things. So my first question for you, I have a 14-year-old.
Uh-huh.
You have more kids than I do and spread out over more ages. So you've got
Yeah.
some older kids, but you've got a number who are right in this range. Do you have any
Yeah.
16, 17-year-olds right now?
I got a 17-year-old. Yeah.
17-year-old. Um, if she came to you and said, uh, you know, Dad, I really want to work this job that's 35 hours a week and I'm still in school, how would you respond?
Mm, well, if it was like, I want to work at Dippy Doo's Drive-In, I don't, I feel like I don't know. uh, but yeah, if I saw an opportunity there, so here's the thing. My daughter, who is a 17-year-old, works a job after school every day, and she works for 3 hours from 3 to 6, and it's at a chiropractic office, and they're actually teaching her a lot of stuff, and it's actually been sort of helping her find a path. And so she's actually thinking she wants to become like an assistant nurse, NA, something like that. And then
A nurse assistant. Nurse assistant. Yeah.
and then kind of going to she's talking about some career path of like going into that, getting some certifications in that, and then and possibly pursuing that. And so that's great. I think that's
Mhm.
good. And
Right.
and on the other hand, she is she is like chronically absent from school. And so like
But is that tied to work?
no, I don't think it is. No.
Okay.
And
Because I mean,
all
she's
I'm
doing 15 hours a week, right? 3 hours
right,
a
right. She's not being
day, five
overworked.
days a
Yes, I
week.
do
That's
not think
15
it's that.
hours.
It's
Yeah.
just she's just bored with school and looking for things to do. And when my point of that is that like she's not getting a lot of school out of school right now. She's bored and she's probably just not into it. And we've had talks about it, but she's not into it, right? And you're just
Right.
like, maybe you should be working more, right? And maybe that's the because it's like I don't think she's going to go to college, right? I don't think she cares about her grades. I don't think any of this is matters to her. And so I'm just like, all right, it is what it is. So yeah, maybe that's the best thing to do. Maybe you should work more and go to school less.
Um, but I'm assuming you want her to get a high school diploma. Like, is
Yeah.
that just that like baseline? She's got to get a high school diploma.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. The bar is so low for a high school diploma. I would be shocked if she didn't get it, right? You know what I mean?
I'm
It's
not going to
like
disagree with you. No.
like even if she dropped out, she could just get a GED, right? Like if she
And you wouldn't
completely
care. Like the difference for you between a GED and a diploma.
well, I would say is the difference between anyone else. Like first off, does anyone care? And even if she thought anyone did, she could just put diploma and not like anyone's going to be like, wait a second, we did some research here. And 'cause does like there's college degrees, like lying about a college degree, but a high school diploma, does anyone care? I'm like, no. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
I
So
just
at some level, you still want her to get base level education. And in the US today, a base level education is a high school diploma, right? Like that's base level.
yeah, yeah, for
Um,
sure.
and if work was interfering with that, you would have issue with that, but you don't have a problem with her working because it's actually been beneficial for her. So you're kind of like, despite what you said earlier, or maybe kind of in connection with what you said, I don't want to say despite, in connection with what you said earlier, you're not generally in favor of kids working lots and lots of hours, particularly dangerous jobs, things like that. But in your daughter's case, you're in favor of her working and she's not doing 30 hours a week, right?
Right.
She's doing 15.
15.
That's very
Hmm.
reasonable and it's actually beneficial.
Yes, exactly.
Um, but you did say like you could maybe see a scenario where you would be okay with more than 30 or
Well,
no.
it's just like, you've got your kids that have you seen Interstellar? And he's like
Yeah, but a long
and
time
he's
ago, but yeah.
yeah, he's got the one daughter who's like, okay, you're gonna be an engineer and I want you to learn physics and everything. And the other son, he's like, yeah, you're gonna be a great farmer, right? And you're just like, this is how it's gonna be, right? And that's if I had a child and you're like, but because I mean, I got someone else. Well, yeah, I'm gonna get myself in trouble. But my other daughter, I'm like, you're probably your best avenue is just get married to somebody and find some nice guy and get married, right? That's probably your best option, right? She's just not incredibly academically inclined, and she's okay with that, right? And
She
she's
knows
like,
it. She's aware.
oh yeah, she's a no, and she's the first to admit it. She's like, college is not. She's struggled in college, and it's just probably not a big. It's probably not going to go anymore. And I'm like, yep, and that's okay. I'm like, get married, have a bunch of kids, marry some
From
rich guy.
from a college professor, if she is not academically inclined, please don't send her to college.
Right. Well, she
We don't
did,
want them.
and
Yeah,
she failed art class, and it was like, I was like, what?
like basic art, like art 101 type.
Yeah, yeah. So I don't know what happened there, but I was like, okay. Anyway, so it didn't work out well.
Okay. All right. So I did want to make it kind of personal. My son, 14, has never had a job. Um, we've been talking about it. At 14, he's eligible to work now in the state of Florida, so he could work. I've been going to the same grocery store for years since he was an itty bitty baby, basically. And I know the manager just because I've seen him a million times and he got to know my son a little bit. And I think it was like a year ago, I was in the store. The manager asked, "Hey, where's your son? I haven't seen him in a while." And I said, "Oh, he's big. He doesn't want to come to the store with him. He can't sit in the cart anymore." And he said, "Hey, when he turns 14, let him know I've got a job for him." So, just be bagging groceries or whatever.
Hmm.
But we know that that's a possibility. Now, our thinking process on this has been if he's in summer camps, so dance camps, robotics camps, things that could potentially turn into careers for him, we're perfectly fine with him doing that instead of working. And it's not like he doesn't do work around the house or other things that he does, but we haven't pushed him getting a job just because he's been busy with other things that we think are intellectually enriching, beneficial for him, etc.
Hmm.
Uh, if he were to stop that. So if he were to say like, I don't want to do a dance camp because his summer intensives for dance are 6 weeks, 5 weeks, 4 weeks. They're pretty long. They're very intensive, and we'll give him a week off before and after. That ends up covering 2/3 of his summer, and then we
Hmm.
usually take a family vacation. So he ends up not having a lot of free time. Um, I sound like I'm trying to justify it, but at the end of the day,
Yeah.
I am. Um, we have talked about if he doesn't do a summer, dance camp or something like that, do we get him a job? So flipping that around a little bit, with your kids, what do they do during the summer? Do they work?
Oh, well, the older ones do. Yeah, for sure. I mean, all of our kids have from 15 to 16, they've had jobs. And even my 14-year-old got a job reffing.
Oh, really?
And he loved that because it was good
Yeah,
money for the amount of time that he put in. It's like $25 a game or something like that, and the games
that's
are
not
less
bad.
than an hour. So he's like, you do a few games, make $100, and for a 14-year-old, that's great. 13-year-old, whatever he is.
He's rich.
Um, no, yeah, and it's here's the thing: jobs are life. That's real life to me, right? And
Mhm.
it's like the more exposure you can get to real life is great. It's weird people, it's strange encounters, it's dealing with adults, all good stuff, right? It's getting money, it's what do you do with your money, learning to manage your money. That's really good stuff. Like that's all like real life stuff. And so like it's um and like we were talking before, right? Like he's invested into a 3D printer, and then now he upgraded to a new 3D printer, and now he's trying to get a third one. And he does these prints, and he sells his prints, and so he's been making money off of that. And it's great, great. Just do that. And
Sure.
so, um, I encourage all that stuff, right? And
Right.
so, yeah, yeah.
But not at the expense of college or high school, right? Or school in general. Now let's take your 14-year-old. Let's say a year from now, he has a friend who says, "Hey, you can make really good money roofing."
Would I care
Yeah.
if he did roofing? Oh, no, I
Hmm.
don't think so. Yeah.
You'd be okay with that, despite the fact
No.
that it's a dangerous occupation and people die every year doing it.
All right, so I'll tell you this. This is the last person. I'm a free range parent, right? It's
Yep.
like if they're gonna die, they're gonna die, right? That's the way I would put it. Like I went climbing with my kids. I took them climbing and we're in Moab, and we were on I think it's called Wall Street, and there's this big wall that runs along this river. Anyway, and we were doing a route on there. And anyway, like there, I did a couple things that were weird. I had Harper doing some stuff that would like she hadn't done before, and
Mhm.
and so I'm talking her through it, and I felt okay about it, right? And but anyway, the people next to us like talked with us afterwards, and they're like, "Hey, we were uncomfortable," and she was cleaning a line off the top, and she'd never done it before, and so I'm like telling her how to do it, and she's um anyway, and they like talked to her, and I was like, you know what? Like this is the best teacher in the world. Like high adrenaline, high stakes, right? And I'm like, I'm there, I'm talking her through it, right? And you're just like, it's like we protect children so much. I think we overprotect them and it's not like and I'm more talking mentally than physically, but
Mhm.
physically as well. Like if you've been, I mean, you go to a ski resort, like it is like a 99 percentile of helmet wearing, right?
Mhm.
Great, I think. I think. Like I do think you can be too safe. And like that, I think
Well,
we are too safe with our children. Way
were
too safe.
were you saying on the skiing, like you're not in favor of helmets, or you are in favor of
I don't wear a
helmets?
helmet. And I have my kids don't wear helmets. But
Really?
yeah. So
You remember when we were teaching Mark Woolley how to snowboard? Or when I
yeah.
was teaching the two of you how to snowboard and what happened
Yes.
that very first day?
Yeah. I think he hit his head with his
Yeah,
board,
he
right?
got concussed. He was out
Yeah.
cold. It was bad. So we certainly do, but that's just me being like, one, they're warm. So I actually like that they're pretty warm. But two, I've fallen enough that I have zero interest in pounding my head. This last time we were out there, Torrin had his very first fall of the season in the parking lot walking to the resort or to the run. He just hit an ice patch in his ski boots and he went down and hit his head, but he had his
Mm,
helmet on, right? So I was like,
hmm.
there we go. Helmet just paid for itself. Um, Interesting. Okay. Okay, so different direction, and then we'll move on to the other topic because we're probably belaboring this way too much. But now let me just throw one other
What I'm
scenario
saying,
because
so I saw this video of these, there was this video they did. It was like on NBC or something on the news or something. They talked about this. There was like this Peruvian family or this how these kids went to school and they crossed this ravine. And the way they crossed it was through a zip line. And they
Mhm.
had two zip lines. One went down and then the other, so they crisscross, right? So they walk up to this one to go down and they go up to this one to go down the other way and they had like some little pulley system, really simple, and they had like a stick for the brake. And the girl, it was like she was like 8 years old, and she would cross this to go to school every day. But it was even worse because she had like a little 5-year-old she put in this little pouch on her chest as she traveled across this thing. And you're like, kids actually can handle responsibility. Like they're actually like I think it's good for them. That's actually an issue I have with education is that they are so passive learners right now. Like
Mhm.
we are doing everything for them and trying to hand it. They sit there in a chair and someone lectures at them and they can completely tune out if they want. And that's why like absenteeism rates are like skyrocketing in it's like 25% in the state of Utah is like chronically absent. And it's ridiculous. And scores nationally are going down, right? And it's just kids are just not engaged, don't care. And it's because we're not putting anything on them. Like it's like, why
Mhm.
should they care? Like the only reason you'd care is parental pressure, right? Family
Mhm.
pressure, and maybe their self-achievement, right? Some sort of like
Right.
self-drive to achieve. And like if they don't have that self-drive to achieve, I've got one kid who's totally going nuts and like wants to do that. Other ones don't care, right? And like you talk to them in their grades, blah blah blah. But if they don't care, they don't care. And it's just like and there's no reason to care like right
Yeah.
now. So and I think it's a huge issue. And I think
Mhm.
we don't give kids anything at all. We don't give them any responsibility.
Interesting. Um, I'm gonna skip what I was gonna bring up as another question. Maybe we'll come back to it, but I think we may be coming around to one of those points where we agree, but we're arriving at it in different directions.
Hmm.
So, Torin, my son, does robotics, right? So these are robotics competitions. They build a robot, they go and do a whole bunch of competitions, and uh,
There's
it's
like
different every year. Yeah,
next and one
yeah,
and
he's in VEX, so it's the
Vex. Yeah.
VEX League. Through his school, uh, we were talking, myself and some of the parents, some of the other parents. He had a competition last weekend. He's got another one this weekend. That kind of what you were saying. It's hard to motivate these kids to work on it. Now they do enjoy it. So obviously
Mhm.
they're doing it. We're not there supervising all the time. We can't. We're not supposed to do that. They have to come up with their own ideas. They have to design and build it themselves. But we were kind of talking about how do we motivate these kids? And I said, at the end of the day, if our kids don't win this competition, they go home to nice houses, plenty of food, computers, games, and a good school.
Mhm.
There are no real
Who cares?
consequences,
Mhm.
right? Now, compare that to the kid from rural China who, if he doesn't or she doesn't succeed in this competition and just like destroy the competition, they go back to abject poverty. Who
Right.
has more motivation? Who really needs to win at this? And every year, it's the teams from China and Singapore that destroy all the other teams around the world in the
Dominating.
VEX
Oh yeah.
competitions, just absolutely destroy them. And those kids are probably not coming from abject poverty in rural China. They're probably coming from, highly developed Shanghai, Beijing, whatever. But they're being pushed really hard, and they know that this is a way into the middle class, they're probably being
Well,
told that from day one.
well,
What are the consequences for our
well,
kids?
that's what I talk about parental pressure, right?
Yeah.
That's the big that if that's present, that's a huge thing, right?
Hmm.
And most parents don't care, right? I mean, they want their kids to do well, but what if their kid's struggling and he's crying and they're crying every night? Da da da. Parents are gonna capitulate and be like, okay, just whatever makes you happy. 100%. We
Yeah.
just we because it doesn't matter because uh
Because of what I said, that they're going to be fine.
well, what's the bearing, right? What does that mean?
Yeah.
They're not going to get a scholarship. They probably weren't going to get one anyway, right? And it's just like if it doesn't matter. I mean, what I'm saying is there's no consequence, and
Hmm.
that's what you're saying,
Yeah.
right?
There's no consequence.
Hmm.
Because what's the consequence of failure? If my son doesn't win this robotics competition, what's the consequence? It's
Right.
the same with
He's
dance.
still going to go home and probably get some ice cream on the way and celebrate, and then go home and play some video games, right?
Well, we're not going to celebrate if he loses. That won't happen in this household.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So there's no like, you competed, you get a participation trophy. Um, I'm actually pretty brutal with him and his friends on this robotics team. Their very first kind of practice run was just an utter disaster. I mean, it was just terrible. So I went up afterwards and I was like, "Hey, what happened?" And they said, "Oh, there was this, that, and the other." And I was like, you can come up with all the excuses you want, but at the end of the day, that was a disaster. Like this was really, really bad. You all need to fix this. And they're like, yeah, we know. We're going to work on some things. But so
Here's the
I think
thing,
we're
Ryan.
pretty close. Yeah.
If you come down too hard on him, right? If you yelled at him
Hmm.
or got really after him, you would have been villainized,
Yeah.
right? Because there are
Yeah.
coaches that do this, and then someone pulls out a phone and films them, and then they get in trouble,
Yeah.
right? You're like, you
Yeah.
guys could do better than that. You're only giving me 90%. Blah 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 blah. You're failures. Blah blah blah. Right? And then some mom's like,
Yeah.
you can't talk to my son like that.
You're not
It's
wrong, Tom. You're not wrong. I think there is a balance. I don't think we need to be, I don't think we need to brutalize them and just insult them. But I don't have a problem telling people the truth. They did not do what they were supposed to do. They could have done so much better, and I'm going to tell them that. I don't have a problem with that.
yeah.
I was going to, yeah.
And I guess the point I keep bringing up is even if you did, it doesn't matter. You know what I mean? It doesn't. And that's the problem is like that family pressure we were just talking about comes from real life consequences, right?
Yeah.
Like we were saying, it's like in Japan, Japan's very similar, right? There's a certain age point, you take certain tests, and depending on how you perform on those tests, is whether you'll become a professional or whether you'll go into blue collar or white collar, right?
Yep.
It's kind of you get sorted. And that is a huge thing, right?
A lot of stress.
In their culture, a lot of stress, and kids will spend months and months studying for this stuff and trying to get good grades on that because there's actual consequences.
Yeah.
And I think I mean, in some ways it's good there's not consequences, right? It's like anyone could be anything in the United States. But at the same time, there's also like, yeah, you'll get some job doing some stupid thing and hopefully, and hopefully like it.
Um, Well, I mean, we do have a whole second topic that we should probably get to, but on your point of like anyone can do anything, I was literally having a conversation. Was it last? It had to have been yeah, last week. It was very brief, but um, yeah, last Friday. I was talking to some of the chemists at my university. I was talking to one about something in particular, and then I happened to kind of walk out of her office and I was talking to another one across the hall who I happen to know, and he said, we really need to do something about students at UT who can't seem to get it through their heads that they're never going to succeed in chemistry. He said, we have students now who are retaking organic chemistry. That's usually the big, killer for students going in certain career paths, including medical school. If you can't pass organic chemistry, you're not going to get into med school. He said, we've got students taking it 3, 4, and 5 times
Wow.
in
Because
college.
they've just got their heart set on this certain career path.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we don't have a policy at my university that says, if you fail this course 3 times, you're a fucking idiot. You're done. You're out. Right.
Would you say that the whole, well, my thought is in the last couple decades, we created incredible pressure for people to attend college. And we've had conversations about this before, but and whether they're prepared and whether they really should are other it's another question. And that's do you think that that's part of this driving it? Like, I need to do this, I need to do that. And you're like, no, actually, you should probably just be like, a plumber, and you'll like it, and it'll be great, and you'll make plenty of money. And
yeah, I again, I don't think you're wrong. I think there is pressure.
I don't know if you think that that's what's driving it, or if it's just people like family that's like told them they need to do this or something.
Yeah, I can give at least one specific case. I had a student in one of my classes, this is like 7 or 8 years ago now, who it was an introduction to sociology. As my wife likes to say, you have to try really hard to fail that class. This is the easiest class that I teach. It is not a hard class. And I think the student was getting a C. And it came up one day that he wanted to go to med school. And I'm like, you're never going to get into med school with C's. That's never going to happen. I was like, why do you want to go to med school? He's like, oh, I want to make a lot of money.
Right. Yes.
So it was all about the money.
And he had no idea what the profession even entailed. He's just, I heard that this makes a lot of money.
That's like, one, that's a terrible motivation. If you want to go to med school, you should have a better motivation. You want to help people. You like fixing people. Anything would have been better than I just want to make a lot of money. If you want to make a lot of money, go into finance, right? Go into something else where it's just about the money. Like literally finance is about making money. That's what finance is.
Yeah. No, I was at this, like, when I was a young kid, and I'm like 19 or 20 or something like that. And I'm at this like bonfire, and there was 3 girls and 3 boys, and we were like hanging out, and they were all like, so what are you doing? Da, da, da. I didn't know them too well. And they were like, oh yeah, I'm pre-med. She said, I'm pre-med too. I'm pre-med. I'm pre-med. I'm pre-med. And they all look at me. I'm like, not pre-med. Like, and like, it was that moment that I was like, you guys have no idea. You're just doing pre-med to do pre-med, right? You're just all going to be doctors because that sounds cool. And you have no idea. Yeah. I was like, oh, this is a thing. I didn't like realize at that moment.
Yeah. But cool. At some level, universities still have a winnowing function. So those students who can't pass OChem, I don't care if you take it 5, 6, or 7 times, you're still not going to go to med school.
We're not going to go.
We have standards.
Because if you failed it a few times, those grades are going to be on the record. Right?
So we have at my university, we have a policy of grade forgiveness 3 times, which I think is probably too many as it is, but you can retake up to 3 courses. So let's say you get an F in a course, you can retake it, you get a C. The C replaces it entirely. So people wouldn't even see.
So the C's gone.
The F would be gone. Oh. The F will stay on your transcript. So it actually stays on there, but the C is what gets factored into your GPA.
Yeah. But if you
Okay.
got a C and then you retook and got an A, the C's gone.
Yes. Right.
Okay.
Exactly. But you can do that
Yeah.
only 3 times
Right.
after that. So
No, I
if you
mean,
took
3 times, that's pretty
OChem,
generous.
yeah. So if
Yeah.
you took OChem and failed it 3 times, and then the
Right.
fourth time you get a D, you can take it a fifth time, but the D is staying on. It doesn't matter. You
Well,
cannot do it again.
that's
So then there's a D and like all of the others. It's not
here.
going away.
Well, the reason you're allowing it 3 times is because they just paid 3 times for that course.
Yes.
And you're like, well, I don't really want to tell you that this isn't going to work out, but I'm hoping you'll eventually get the hint,
Yeah.
but not too quickly.
I know. Okay, let's move on. But I think we're probably generally in agreement on this.
I think so.
I don't think we want young people working crazy hours at the expense of getting a basic education. I think that's generally true, and we probably don't want them engaging in risky jobs. But um, kids working, we don't have a problem with that. It helps increase their
Regulating church
responsibility.
worked, and I don't have a problem with regulating it, and none of those even seemed that terribly too restrictive, right? So it's
Right.
just like, yeah,
Okay.
didn't seem to matter.
All right. We'll see if people have comments, see if people disagree with us. Maybe somebody out there's like, no, I want child labor. I want all kids working, slaves. But we'll see. Second topic. This one is again, I mean, it happened here, but it's a more general issue. So at my university, University of Tampa is a private non-sectarian institution. So we have no religious affiliation. The university has never had a religious affiliation. It was actually founded by the Chamber of Commerce in Tampa. Tommy, you know things about Chamber of Commerce?
Mhm.
Yeah, what is a Chamber of Commerce, just for our
It's
listeners who don't know?
well, just so the main rule you need to know is it's not a government organization. It's just like a nonprofit, usually organization that just works with businesses to promote business.
There you
So
go.
they'll do lobbying and stuff at the state level, and then but they'll often sponsor job fairs and things like that nature just to kind of promote business.
Yeah. So it's an organization that promotes businesses. So that's how our university was founded. It's never had a religious affiliation, doesn't have a religious affiliation. And I say that as background. We have 2 commencement ceremonies, so 2 graduation ceremonies every year, one in December, one in May. The one in May is usually the bigger one. That's when, more of our students graduate, but some students graduate in after the December semester. And so we do hold a smaller commencement. For the bigger commencement in May, we usually have, some outside speaker, probably not a huge name. We don't usually bring in big names for that, but we'll have an outside speaker who gives some sort of talk. For the December commencement, we always have a faculty member, and it's a faculty member who has just won an award. So this is kind of the highest award that faculty members can win. It's complicated. I won't go into all the details, but basically this December, we have a faculty member give our commencement speech.
Mm.
I happened to know a little bit about her. I don't know her all that well personally, but this faculty member spends an inordinate amount of time on X, formerly known as Twitter, and other social media platforms, has a blog where she identifies as a Christian apologist. Okay.
Okay.
This is not what she teaches. We do not have divinity school at our university. We don't have anything related to that. I'm the closest we have to teaching about religion and its sociology of religion. She's in the College of Business. So that's like her actual area is business related stuff. But on the side, she's a Christian apologist. And she spends lots of time on this. She's made lots of videos. She's on YouTube. She's on like all the platforms pushing Christian apologetics all the time. Okay. She wins the award. She's the commencement speaker. She gets up during a commencement talk, right? She's got 10 minutes or something in front of 1,000 students from around the world, from all across the country. We have students from all 50 states and over 100 countries around the world, many from the Middle East. We have lots of Jewish students, Muslim students. Knowing the numbers today, a lot of them are not religious. We have Hindu students, Buddhist students, you name it. We've got a very diverse population, and all of their parents and relatives are here to celebrate their graduation. And she proceeds to get up and give a talk in which she
Sermon?
basically, Yeah, she basically encourages all of them to thank God on a daily basis, to make God a central component of their life. She didn't ever say Jesus, but she said God an awful lot in a commencement address. Okay. Um, yeah. Uh, at least half a dozen references to God in very explicit ways of like God should be the focus of your life. She went on some kind of rants about non-religious people as well. So she was kind of actually critical of non-religious people. Um, yeah. Uh, anyway, I'm going to leave it there. Okay, we could get into details if you really want the details, but I'm going to leave it there, and I'm just going to kind of ask broadly your take on that as a commencement address. Again, at a non-sectarian, so we have no religious affiliation. We are a secular institution. What's your take, Tom?
Man, well, I don't know. This one's easy to me. It's like because it basically goes back to what I said before. I'm a huge proponent of free speech, and it's these are grown adults. You're at a college. It's you say whatever the crap you want to say, right? If it was like that's the thing, right? It's like, was it offensive? Did it make people uncomfortable? That could be said about anyone presenting any idea, right? And I would even say ideas that are worth pursuing are usually uncomfortable and offensive, right? And that are gonna provoke or change you, right? And I think I mean, to me, that's the idea of what college, you should be challenged at college,
Mm.
right? You should be challenged. And so like, yeah, here's the thing. She's the minority now, right? The majority are the atheists. It's like in the
Not
setting
statistically.
that you're saying,
Maybe.
100%. And that challenge those ideas, right? It's like it's I mean, there's a lot of statistics that would point to the abandoning of God and us
Mhm.
becoming more atheistic, that's causing some problems in
Mm.
society, and a lack of meaning and happiness. And so there's nothing wrong with challenging that idea, right? And or saying, hey, you should get God in your life. And the thing is like, she didn't even say who God was. It's like you could because like Jordan Peterson gives a great thing of, he talks about what is your values, your structure of value, and then what's the hierarchy, and whatever's at the top, that's God, and he's saying that's God, whatever that is for you. And I was like, that's a great explanation of God, right? And he's just like, whatever your values are, right at the very top, that's God. And because it's ideals, that's what it is, right? It's ideals. And like and we talk about that, right? We pursue the
Mm.
ideal. And that so like, yeah, it's like it's like she could have softened the blow by maybe stating something like that, right? Whatever your God is, blah blah blah, pursue it. And but I don't see any even reason to do that, right? It's like, this is the world. Because like, here's the thing: if someone came up and said something about, LGBTQT, blah, 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 blah. And this is the way I'm gay, and this is the way it is, and blah, blah, blah. And there plenty of people would have cheered him, and also lots of people wouldn't have agreed with that,
Mhm.
or prescribed to that. And it's like, but that's okay, right? And
Sure. Yeah.
we're all tolerant. This is what the world, that's what should happen. And so when someone's like, this is who I am, this is what I believe in, this is what makes me happy, and I think it'll make you happy too, go for it, right? Like to me, that's the least controversial thing I could even think of
Okay.
someone saying.
So let's play with this for a second.
Yes.
Um, I'm going to start out by saying I actually agree with you on the free speech grounds. Okay.
Hmm.
From a free speech standpoint, yep, she can say that. That's perfectly fine. Let her say whatever she wants to say. I'm not going to restrict her speech. Whether I think it's appropriate or not is a different question, right? So
Sure.
there are times when you can say things, but the context matters. Okay.
Sure. For sure.
So how I want to kind of push this a little bit. What if the person who was giving the commencement speech was a Satanist and
Hmm.
got up and said, Satan has actually helped me quite a bit in my life. I think all of you should say Hell Satan on a daily basis, praise Satan, and so on.
Right.
Would you be just as keen and supportive of the Satanist as you are of the Christian?
Well, I mean, so we kind of covered a lot of some of this material already because it's like because I think it was last time we were talking about the Palestinian protests, right? And basically anti-Israel protests that were going on and saying some stuff that I think was wildly inappropriate, but the crux of that issue that we were talking about was they should be allowed to give free speech. They should be allowed to
Mhm.
say whatever they want. What I was bemoaning was the double standard on these campuses that are like, expel someone for misgendering, but then you could actually call for genocide and it's okay. You're
Right.
like, that's wildly inappropriate. And as she was Harvard president was since fired.
For
Um,
other reasons, but in
yeah,
relation,
I don't even
yes.
know, right? Because they were calling out the plagiarism, but I don't think they cited that as the reason she left.
Yeah.
But regardless, uh that so it's like, yeah, it's like say whatever you want to say. It's just like you said, I'm expecting to go to college and have my ideas challenged, and they should be challenged. And I mean, in order the Jordan Peterson quoting, in order to think, I must risk offending you. And so that is your thoughts in order to think and come up with new ideas and thoughts and concept, you got to risk offending everyone around you. And that's like, yeah, you want to say something crazy about, Satanism or something like that. There was a there was some, you'll probably know this better than I was, that they put some statue of a Satan
Hmm.
in some sort of government building, right? And it
Uh,
was sort of like
yeah.
it was their way of, because I think there was a statue of the Ten Commandments or something like that, and they were like,
Well, there have
well,
been a
we've
bunch of
got
these,
this, so
but yeah.
you have to do this, right?
Uh-huh.
You have to put
Yeah.
this in here. We need to represent everything. And then there was some follow-up where some guy, I guess, knocked the head off of it.
So this was a monument. This just happened in December. It was a
Hmm.
monument in the Iowa State Capitol
Iowa,
celebrating
yeah.
Christmas.
Hmm.
And any religious group, because they're allowing Christians to set up a creche, right? So they're
Right.
allowing Christians to set up a manger scene. That means they have to open up the space to all religions.
Which
And
they should.
members of the Satanic Temple in Iowa put together a display representing the satanic values, and it had a statue that had a goat head on it. It was actually a really beautiful goat head if you've seen it. I don't know if you
Oh
saw
yeah,
the picture, but it was
for
actually
sure.
really, really pretty and beautifully done.
Shut up.
No, honestly, like
Of
it's
all
like
the
glass embossed and really, like it's really
Yeah.
beautiful. Um, but yeah, then
Okay.
there was a pastor who tweeted about it, all right? Xed about it. I don't know what you call it now. So we're still going to say tweeted, saying that this was super offensive. You're not allowed to do this. And then he eventually did go in and took a baseball bat to it and broke the head. They
Yes.
left the monument up for a few days after that because they had specific windows, but he destroyed it, right?
Yes. And he was proud of it and was basically saying like, hey, I'm standing up for Christianity and stuff like that. And I think that was all totally inappropriate. Like that is
Which
not
part was inappropriate?
knocking the head off. And
Okay,
he
it's
could be
actually
offended by it.
illegal. It's not inappropriate. It's illegal.
Oh, sure. Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. He shouldn't have done
He
it.
should face legal consequences for what he did.
And were the Satanists mainly putting that up there to stick it to a bunch of Christians? Yeah, probably.
Hmm.
Um, and were they successful? Yes, 100%. And that's and they're just more trying to prove a point and whatever, 100%. But like that's free speech. That's what free speech is, right? And it's like you can't be. There was someone that was it was someone who was calling for in the UK, they were saying that we shouldn't, if someone was basically calling for the destruction of Israel, and if they were an immigrant, they should have their passport, their visa denied, and they
Hmm.
should be sent
Kicked
out.
out. Yeah.
And I'm like, no, that's not what we're, that like oh, they're, it's anyone saying anything I don't like, we should shut them down. You're like, do you guys realize how badly that goes? How quick, right? That this is like founding fathers and just like, this should be everyone should fundamentally know this concept, right? That you're like, we should be allowed to say anything. And you're just like, just because you don't like it doesn't mean we should ban it, restrict it, or it makes you uncomfortable or whatever, right? It's like, no, we need to be able to say lots of stupid stuff, and that's totally fine. So yeah, I don't know. It just
So
totally makes sense to me.
you would be supportive of the inverse of this, right? Not a Christian apologist, but a member of the Satanic Temple or something,
No,
getting up and
yeah.
saying "Hell, Satan." You're like, free
Here's
speech.
here's the thing. I intentionally seek out videos that are contrary to the point of view that, to my echo chamber,
Mm-hmm.
to hear the other point of view. I'll listen to Rachel Maddow, and I'll listen to what's that girl? Joy Reid, I think.
I don't know.
She's the black woman. She's got like blonde hair though, and
I,
she's
I
very
don't
provocative,
I don't
and
listen to any political news
and
whatsoever.
and you're just like, oh my gosh, you're an idiot, and like but I want to hear it, right? You're like, so like, yeah, I'll intentionally stick my head into the fire hose, right? To be like, okay, I don't want to ever get in that trap where you're like, oh, this is my tribe and everyone else is stupid or uninformed or evil, and
Mhm.
like anyone who doesn't agree with me, right? It's just like, such a trap, such a trap. And like, that's part of the reason for this podcast, right? It's like,
Sure, yeah.
hear the other point of view, talk through it, and like, we've got to do that more often, and we're so bad about it. We're so polarized. That's like, oh my gosh, someone's saying something that I don't agree with. Turn it off, shut it down, da da da, right? And you're like, you have to, right? Would I love it? No, of course not. Would I be like, oh my gosh, that's the dumbest point, right? I'll be like, that's so stupid. Would I, the question is, would I boo? That would be the question, right? Would I boo? I don't know. I don't know.
That's interesting.
That's a good question.
Yeah. So for me, like I said, fundamentally we agree on the free speech thing. I just I wonder in her mind, did she not factor in the context? Okay. And maybe you're right that at some level she's like, you know what? I don't care.
Hmm.
This is what works for me, and I'm just going to tell everybody, and so be it. But do you change what you say given the context?
Right. Like, so yeah, that would be the final point I'd say is like, is that an effective way to change hearts and minds, right? I don't think so, but there's certainly a type of Christianity that feels like you go in no matter what, no matter how unwelcome you are,
Right.
you stick your head in there. And I don't, that's hard, right? I get it, and but at the same time, I'm like, I don't know if you're doing more damage than good. But sometimes you do though. Sometimes it's exactly what someone needs to hear, right? Like that's what I've heard, and that's what I've seen from time to time. And like, I don't know. That's a hard one.
Yeah. Real quick, and then we can wrap up here. I did have a conversation with a number of faculty after this happened, and one in particular, she's like, "Oh, I loved it. It was my favorite
What
commencement address."
a different faculty
Yeah,
member.
different faculty. This is not the one who gave it. This is
Yeah,
one, right? And she's like, "Oh, yeah, I loved it. I loved all the references to Christianity." She's
because
like,
she's Christian,
she's very Christian. She's
right?
very Christian, right?
So that would make sense.
Yes, it totally makes sense. And she's like, I loved it. I thought everything was great. And I said, I'm not challenging her right to say whatever she wants to say, but I'm wondering about the appropriateness of this. And then I asked her the very same question I asked you, which is like, what if it was a Satanist who got up and said that? She's like, that would be inappropriate. And I was like,
Right. And you're
do
like,
you not see
double
the hypocrisy
standard.
here? And she
Yeah.
didn't. She really didn't. She was
No, because
like,
see, that would be different because those people are bad. And like, right? Yeah. It's like, yeah.
Yeah.
That's funny.
I thought it was pretty interesting. So anyway, it obviously raised, some hackles at my university. Nothing's going to come of it, right? Like, uh,
Right.
I think
And
yeah,
you knew that professor she's going in
Oh,
like
100%.
she knew what she's getting into and was prepared, probably gonna grit her teeth and wait for the
Yeah.
backlash and maybe even relish the backlash, right?
She might. And as far as I know, there was no backlash. Several people were like, "Oh, you're the president of the faculty senate. Are we going to do something?" And I was like, "No." As close to a free speech absolutist as both you and I are, right? Like as close as you can be, short of you can't, call for killing people. I was like, "Yeah, was it inappropriate given the context? Yes, I think that's true." But she has the right to say whatever she wants to say. There will be no consequences from my end. I
You're
mean,
right.
I didn't think it was a very good
Will she be
talk.
asked to give another speech? Probably not. But yeah,
But she
you
has
know
the
what?
right
We're
to
gonna
do
get there.
that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, I just thought it was interesting. I hope that, made for some entertaining conversation for our listeners. Anything you want to add on that, Tom?
Well, I would say this, everyone is proselyting at all times, right? Anyone who wears a rainbow flag on their lapel, right? Or anything, you're proselyting. The coloring in your hair, the haircut you wear, right? It's all proselyting, right? And sometimes it's very provocative. And you see these shirts that are like what was it? I was at my family reunion and someone was wearing a um $2 gas something something. I wish that we had those days back again or something like that. Vote Trump or something like
It's
that,
like,
right?
let's go, Brandon. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, right. Let's go, Brandon. That's a perfect example, right? Just totally provocative, right? They're
Right.
totally just saying F you on whatever you think. It's proselyting, right? It's
Mhm.
proselyting. And you're like, it's all about, look, I've got my thing, it's my tribe, and look, there's more of us than you. So we're bigger, in this setting. So it's like we're more right for some reason. It's a
Which is a
hundred
logical
percent.
fallacy for our listeners called argumentum ad populum,
Yes,
argument from
right.
numbers, right? Yeah.
But but I mean, this is all that stuff, right? And both sides do it, and they both and that's what rallies are for, right? You do it where everyone's together, and look at us, we're this huge movement, right?
Yeah.
Even though some of us like trucked in from other cities, whatever, right? To try to look like there's more of us there. It's all, that's what we do, right? So everyone's proselyting to the other people, right? And it's like I'm crazy Christian, like crazy Christian. And but I'm go about it in a very different way. And there's certain, I want people to see the results of my life and what I'm doing and go, oh my gosh, that's, and then and if they ask, man, yeah, we're gonna have a conversation. And I'll sometimes provoke, right? And just be like, hey, what do you believe in? What are you doing? Da, 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 right? But it's usually on a much more personal setting and when I think it's appropriate. So yeah, but everyone's doing it. Everyone's doing it.
Hmm. But I don't know if I entirely agree with that. How many door-to-door atheists have knocked on your door and be like, "Hey, you should be an atheist."
Right. And whenever we go out and we're going hiking, you'll
Yes.
drop something. You'll always drop some little provocative comment that's like some slam on Trump or something like that. And
Well,
it'll just
I'm
be
certainly
like,
proselyting on that. Like, I'm not going to challenge that on
right. But all
on
of that is
politics.
this is who I am and this is my
Sure.
position and this is the way the world should be. It's very
Yeah,
much a statement,
I
right?
agree. I agree, just not on religion stuff. I mean, it gets really awkward to try and proselytize
But
when
you're
it's
not
like, yeah,
religious.
right, exactly. So how
Right.
am I going to proselytize? Like,
Right.
you should be not
I was just
that.
thinking about, I was just praying to my atheist God, and it just made me think about, right. Yes.
Yeah. Um, no, I get it. Certainly on other things. And this is why I was like, I don't think we disagree on this. I usually refer to it as everybody has an identity. I think people need identities. People have a strong sense, and I'm not trying to argue like identity politics. I'm saying everybody kind of has to feel like they are somebody, that they
You're
have
right.
a sense of who they are.
Yes.
And as a, I don't know, as a sociologist, I I do a lot of, people watching. I'm really interested in that. And I'm always trying to figure out by people's haircuts, by what they're wearing, by how they're walking, how they're holding themselves, what they're listening to, who they're spending time with. What are they trying to tell me about them?
Yes, right.
So,
Well,
so I think it's the same thing that you're saying. It's just a different way of framing it.
I,
That
I,
I look at people and go, why are you telling me this? What is it you're trying to tell me?
well, I will say, here's the thing. Here's the thought that's, I think, very interesting. I agree with you. It's like you wish that everyone would walk the road and find out who they are and then put on that thing, right? And
Mhm.
this is who I am. This is what gives me meaning. This is my identity of who I am. What is interesting and what I see is how many people don't find that through walking some road, but they just pick up an already
Oh,
um
100%.
like, oh,
Existing
here's a
identity.
prefab
Yep.
identity. Why don't you put this one on, right? And it's almost, it's this we've talked about this a lot where you have like these two big ideologies, right? Left
Hmm.
and right. And it's this big funnel for everybody. And like that in the old days, 50, 60 years ago, there was a big broad spectrum of ideology and like people could be pro abortion, but we're Christian and this and that. And where we funneled into these big two things. And it's like, oh, MAGA. Okay, here's your hat. Here's your thing. Here's the things. Blah, blah, blah. We vote for Trump. We do this thing, right? We got to build the wall. You have to be
Right.
this. It's like, and it's all like package. Here's your package. And the same could be said of the left. And it's just like, you're on board. Here's your identity. And it's like, and that's what I was saying when I was saying haircuts, hair
Hmm.
color, right? Most likely, if it's a woman with a short haircut and with a little bit of hair color in it, she's probably a leftist, right? And she might even be gay. But it's like, there's a pretty darn good chance she is. And it's like, it's, it's an advertisement, right? It's just like this is the club I'm in and this is who I'm with. And like I'm not even and you're like, I want you to did you really walk that road to get there? Or did you just pick that one off the ground on the when the first step that you stepped out of when you left your parents' house, was that the first rock you picked up, right? And because that's what it feels like, right? It's these people that like, well, I don't know, I'm gonna go with this tribe. And you're
Yeah.
like, that's I think it's shallow and sad, right? And it's like but it's the reality we live in. And but yeah, I wish everyone walked 1,000 miles and then said, no, this is it, right? This is who I am. This is why I advocate for people leaving the country and seeing something different in life, right?
Hmm.
Wow, when I was over here in Japan, people did they crap on the floor in a hole in the ground and they're still have better electronics than us, right? You're like, how is this even possible? So uncivilized, yet so civilized at the same time.
Well, do recognize they also have amazing bidets now. So the,
Yes,
the the
yeah,
world's best bidets are in Japan.
they are. And it's like, oh my gosh, people do things differently and it's okay, right?
Yep.
And we all live and survive. And so like I just it's frustrating to me that to see people just put something on and be like, here I am. And it's obviously they're just grabbing it's just this big all-consuming vacuum that's sucking everyone's identities into it. And you're like, okay, that's not good. And it's happening on both sides. And it's frustrating. I want people to really know who they are. I don't think anyone really does. To know
Well,
thyself.
yeah. Uh, and I don't know that I would say that it's just a political issue. I think, like I said, I think everybody needs an identity. They have to have a sense of like, I am this. I
Hmm.
don't think that's the equivalent of meaning. I think it's just an identity. They need to know who they are. It's hard to come up with your own, right?
Hmm.
I think that's true. It's hard to come up with your own identity.
Because anything
Interesting
that's not going downriver with the rest of the river
is
is
very hard.
work.
Yeah, it's hard.
Yes.
It's work.
Yes.
Um, and just for fun, right? I see. I think you're wearing the North Face shirt. Is that?
I am. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, which is actually interesting because if I didn't know you and I saw you randomly in an REI,
Hmm.
what would that be telling me, Tom, as a North Face wearer?
I
If
don't
you're in
know.
REI,
I
right?
do like REI and
Right. So, but
but
I happen to
what is that?
know.
Does that have a
well,
signal?
that usually is a significant. It's a signification that you're on the left.
Oh, really?
Right. So, which is weird to say. Outdoorsy people who
To
tend to
a
be,
degree, you're
yeah,
right. Yeah,
and it's not exclusive, right? If
right,
you were wearing camouflage, then you would
right,
be on the right and
right.
outdoorsy.
Oh, camouflage. You got that at Cabela's or
Yeah,
Shields,
see,
right?
because
Okay, yeah,
because
yeah. I see
people
what
on
you're
the
saying.
left shop at REI because they're not
Yeah.
shooting things outside, they're hiking.
Mm,
But
mm-hmm.
people on the right, they shop at Cabela's, they're shooting things outside, they're fishing.
Mm,
And that's obviously not exclusive. There's always going to be
right.
people who cross over in all sorts of interesting ways. But again, it's me reading, like, what are you trying to tell me by wearing that
What am I
shirt?
broadcasting?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I just
100%.
I do this all the time, but I think people need identities. I don't know. I've got more ideas on this. Maybe we'll have to have another podcast on it at some point. But we did come full circle back to bidets. I'm impressed that we got. Is our Lux bidets made in Japan? I don't think so. Sorry, Lux. We probably shouldn't have said the best bidets in the world were made in Japan. Oops, our bad. Anyway, anything else you want to add for our podcast tonight, Tom?
No, no, I'm good. I thought Lux bidets were made in Japan.
Oh, maybe
I'm
they
gonna look
are.
this
That'd be
up.
great. We should look it up. Because then I could say the best bidets are made in Japan, but I know they're a US based company.
Are they?
I'm pretty sure they're a US based company. At least,
Yeah, I
when I've
think
been
you're right.
communicating with the people at Lux. Oh well.
Right, right. All right. Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, thanks everyone. If you have feedback, thoughts, comments, other topics you wanted us to discuss in the future, drop us a comment on YouTube or email us. Yeah, thanks for dropping in, and we'll see you soon.
Tom, look, we don't always agree when it comes to politics, but if there's one thing that we do agree on, it's that there's only one way to clean up after going to the bathroom, and that's with a Lux bidet.
Listen, I've been using bidets forever, all right? And Lux is the best, all right? So, I mean, I've got like the little squatty potty thing and the bidet. It's like a whole experience. It's actually, it's probably one of the highlights of the entire day. But like, it gets me clean and it gets me ready to talk politics in a civilized manner.
Yeah, no, I agree with you on that. Every time that I use a toilet, it doesn't have a bidet. When I go to a friend's house, I just don't use their toilet, first of all. But that's about as uncivilized as it gets. So civil conversations demand civil hygiene practices.
That's why everyone should get a bidet.
And just to be clear, right, we want to make it clear, listeners can get their own Lux bidet with 10% off by ordering at luxbidet.com and using our promo code FCBG10, Finding Common Battlegrounds 10. And the last thing that we want to say, Lux is supporting this podcast, but they don't support one side or the other. They support civil conversations and clean butts.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Finding Common Battlegrounds. The music is by Ben Sound. The views expressed in this podcast are those of the participants and not those of their employers. For more information or more episodes, you can find us at findingcommonbattlegrounds.com.